Hello, I am Wale Famirewa, and this is Nigeria Going Beyond Oil. Our program reviews activities designed to move Africa's top oil producer away from a focus on oil as a primary revenue source. The recent sharp decline in the oil price did not only shock Nigeria's government. Every month, oil revenues are shared between the federal, state, and municipal governments. So a drop in oil revenues also hurts the states. In today's program, we find out how Nigerian state governments are moving away from a focus on petrodollars. Nigeria is made up of 36 states. Each state government is led by a governor who is elected to drive the local economy. Over the last 2 decades, most states have relied heavily on their share of Nigeria's oil wealth, which is distributed each month. Rising oil revenues between 1999 and 2014 meant that many state governments had a decent supply of cash to run the civil service and to drive economic activity. The focus on the oil cash meant that most states were inefficient in spending and paid little attention to other revenue sources. And a sharp decline in oil revenues in 2015 exposed this weakness.
Since this oil that comes to the federal purse is true majorly from oil, so it therefore means that since we have this downturn in the oil prices, crude prices, and the attendant maybe destruction that we are having from the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. Of course, we are feeling that maybe the brunt, that lack of probably good planning.
At the peak of the oil price cycle, Nigeria was getting at $110 a barrel and 2 million barrels a day. What was shared among the states and the federal government was as high as 730 billion naira. At its low, that is sometime in 2016, it dropped to as much as 320 billion naira. So you can see that there was almost a 50% cut in revenue.
All the states, including the federal government, we are all suffering from this, our total dependence on oil, which had made our economy to be monolithic in nature. But clearly when we came in, we realized that for us to sustain ourselves, for a state to be what maybe our forebears envisioned it to be, we need to rely less on probably what comes from the federal purse.
It became very clear that some states were not viable, one. Two, they're overstaffed. And so a state like Delta State has a wage bill which is higher than the total allocation of Oyo State. So how can Delta State have more employees than Oyo State, which has a higher population than Delta State? Right? So much so that when the price of oil dropped, and we got to a point where some of those states, oil producing states, could hardly break even. So it first and foremost, it stopped the massive recruitment of workers. It made them look into the ghost worker phenomenon, and also stopped and helped to discourage political gratification by just hiring all sorts of people.
But not all states depend on Nigeria's oil wealth. Lagos State, Nigeria's commercial capital, is a prime example of a government that has moved away from a focus on petrodollars.
Well, we all know Lagos State is a center of excellence, and it's very dynamic, and a lot of strategy is put in place carefully to ensure that we continue to generate the necessary levels of revenue to enable development of a state. Now, some of these strategies are basically leveraging on technology, a lot of people-oriented services and administrative changes that come in all the time. Basically, on technology, the state and the agency have invested a lot of money on automation so that all the records and of all the taxpayers are properly monitored, basically. Also, we have what you call the electronic banking system, which tends to monitor all our collections statewide. So that has been a very, very efficient and effective tool in monitoring that. Well, Lagos has always been blessed with very, very good and dynamic leadership from the time of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to Raji Fashola and to our dynamic current governor, Mr. Kiwumi Ambode. They have put in a lot of infrastructural development into the state, and people see this, and this encourages them to pay their taxes. We also have a lot of tax enlightenment campaigns. We have to let the people know the type of taxes that they're liable to pay. We let them know the rates, and we also showcase all the achievements of the governor so that it speaks for itself, and it encourages a lot of compliance, voluntary compliance on the side of taxpayers.
Lagos is in a class of its own in Nigeria as a government that is driving an economy that doesn't depend on oil revenues. It may be the smallest state in Nigeria by land mass, but according to 2016 data provided by the Joint Tax Board, Lagos State's government generated 302 billion naira, or just under $1 billion, from taxes and other collections. The Joint Tax Board was unable to provide data for oil-producing river states and for Oyo and Anambra states. However, CNBC Africa estimates that Lagos accounts for over 35% of tax and other internal revenues collected by the 36 states.
2016 was a year of recession, and we equally did almost as well as we have almost done. In fact, we achieved some numbers that were a bit unprecedented here. There are other measures that we had in place. These measures include constant engagement with the taxpayers. We took the high net worth individuals and the multinational companies that remit a lot of these taxes, and we engage them. We have what we call a relationship management unit in the agency, and this unit constantly engage the taxpayers, encouraging them to pay the taxes timely. We also had other strategies. Of course, continuous overhauling of the technology infrastructure has helped. The government has in place what we call HRC, Hotel and Occupancy Restaurant Consumption Tax Law, which we have also, aggressively pursued, and we're actually engaging in a public-private partnership at the moment to help drive a lot of the consumption tax. This involves going to all the hotels, all the restaurants, and also all the event centers. And we're going to have them monitored online real time from now on. So that has helped. Another strategy has been that of the informal sector, trying to exploit as much as we can the advantages in the numbers in the informal sector.
The state government is not resting on its oars. Recently, it announced a grand plan to provide electricity to unleash the industrial potential of Nigeria's commercial capital.
What the Lagos state government has done was to launch the embedded power program of the state, and the ambition is to generate up to 3,000 megawatts, which the Lagos state will guarantee. The private sector investors will put the plan together, and they will sign the power purchase agreement with the distribution companies. But Lagos State will now add its guarantee to enhance the bankability of the project. If we look at the far eastern axis of the state, I can tell you about 30% of the landmass there are still very virgin, not developed at all. The same with the western flank of the state. So if you look at the total land mass of the state, you will realize that almost like 50-something% of it still remain undeveloped. So the strategy is to go and, implement 24 hours power supply at those zones, so that in those zones, industrialization can spring up there. And when that happens, we can be sure that the population can be dispersed in the first instance, and then employment can increase, government revenue can increase. In fact, we can double government revenue very, very quickly from the taxes we get from incremental production and activities that comes from all this industrialization. So we are confident that our IGR is going to be the greatest beneficiary of this power sector initiative of the state.
Last year, Lagos joined the League of Oil-Producing States, and this is set to unleash a new stream of revenue for the government.
We're very pleased that the discovery of oil in Lagos takes us into a different realm again. Well, we hope that definitely to boost a lot of the economic activity in Lagos. And arising from this boost in economic activity, we hope we can generate personal income taxes and some of the other levies and duties that are accruable from such businesses.
While many will cite the unique advantages that Lagos State has as the former political capital of Nigeria and as the commercial capital of the country, its success at generating revenues through taxes and the decline in oil revenues has inspired many other states to institute programs to grow non-oil revenues. Ogun State is one example of a state making significant progress in developing a non-oil economy.
In terms of our ranking of federal allocations received, we're never among the highest of states. So it was apparent from the onset that if we wanted to move the state forward, we were going to have to look at other things.
We make sure that in Ogun State, anybody that is trading here or anybody that has maybe companies here, they have interest here in manufacturing or whatever here, they must be secure. Before we came in, it was difficult for people to even do more than one shift. But today, as we speak in Ogun State, people work all around 24 hours. They have their 3 shifts. Aside from that, we now decide that we must make sure that our roads are very good. We are not just now looking at roads alone. Intermodal, we are looking at our rail as well. We are looking at what we can do, even by having maybe an airport here that will be responsible for moving all these goods that is being manufactured here in Ogun State.
Because of a lot of developments that this government has embarked on, a lot of companies are coming to Ogun State, and the more corporate companies you have in Ogun State, the more payee they pay into Ogun State. In the past 2 years, I believe we have brought in almost 250 to 300,000 into the tax net. So if you look at the numbers year on year, Ogun State is now second to Lagos State, and you see an increase. In 2015, I think we were number 5. The last figure they released, we were number 2. So there has been tremendous growth in Ogun State.
Many things that have been hitherto informal or perhaps poorly executed, we're now putting greater structure and greater kind of consistency to the way that we approach these things. IRS is the single largest contributor, but then we have lands, for example. We have urban and physical planning, and these things logically go hand in hand. Revenues generated from land sales, from land use charge, again goes hand in hand with the increase in industrial activity. When you attract more residents into the state, people are building houses, buying houses, and associated revenues with that also begin to come in. So it's really associated with the evolution of the Ogun State economy. So Ogun State has the potential to be almost a microcosm of the Nigerian economy, and that's the way that we see ourselves. We have the opportunity and the capacity to be very effective and efficient and productive in the agricultural space. We've already demonstrated strength and growing strength in the industrial space. And once those 2 elements are growing well, it's kind of natural that the service segment of the economy will also follow. So, you know, we see ourselves as a very well-balanced, potentially, subset of the Nigerian economy, where anybody who has almost any area of commercial or industrial interest can actually express themselves in the state.
Yes, we have this proximity to Lagos. We are not going to shy away from that. And that's why I told you that we want to be what New Jersey is to New York.
Ogun State is clearly making progress in boosting its non-oil revenues. After the break, I'll tell you about what other states are doing to raise internally generated revenues. And I'll also show you how states are collaborating with the Federal Inland Revenue Service to boost revenues on the national and sub-national levels. I'll be back with that when we come back on Nigeria Going Beyond Oil. Welcome back to Nigeria Going Beyond Oil. Before the break, we showed you how Lagos State is a prime example of a state in Nigeria that has moved away from a focus on oil revenue, and how neighboring Ogun State is a great example also of a state making great progress in the drive to raise internally generated revenue. But Ogun State is not the only state making progress. According to the Joint Tax Board, after Ogun and Lagos states, the northern Kano state recorded the largest increase in internally generated revenue between 2015 and 2016. Kano's IGR was up by 17 billion naira, or 127%. Other strong performers include Kwara State, which increased IGR by 10 billion naira, or 140%, Kaduna State that raised non-oil revenues by 5.5 billion naira, or 48%, and the oil-producing Akwa Ibom State, which recorded an 8.4 billion naira, or 57% rise in IGR. The improvement reflects the impact of policies and programs designed to reduce waste, expand the tax net, and improve collection.
The states are also trying their best, and I think their respective governors and the commissions of finance also have seen the importance of IGR, and I think they're also giving the state chairman all the required support.
There was fiscal responsibility had to be taken into consideration. You had to generate revenues, and generating revenues, you had PAYE, but also there were rates, tariffs, and all that. And I give you an example. Lagos State collects about 3 to 4 billion naira from water rates. Delta State collects only 20 million naira. Edo State collects about 10 million naira from water rates. So you can see the difference. If water, if you can actually supply water and impose that rate, which is what the water rate is, those states could easily, as a minimum, pick up 1 billion naira each. And that will go a long way.
The growth in non-oil revenues have been supported by legislation. For example, in Kaduna State, the improvement in IGR has been driven by the implementation of the Kaduna State Tax Consolidation and Codification Law of 2016. This law empowers the Kaduna State Internal Revenue Service to collect not just taxes, but revenues of state ministries, departments, and agencies. The new law also prevents the payment of taxes in cash, therefore reducing the risk of losses to corruption. The collection of payments due to government agencies is also driven by a third party to that transaction, again reducing the risk that funds due will not reach the government.
We introduced TSA in August 2011. And the TSA is what they are being introduced now at the federal level. Because when we came in, we have more than 500 accounts, in fact, 620 something to be precise. In terms of even managing those accounts, will be very difficult, very, tasking to do. And we introduced what we call cashless. Cashless is so key. Let me give you an instance. In some of our institutions, let me use one. The total money that they've generated ever in a session was about 300 and something million in a session. The moment we introduced the cashless, which means we created portal, it moved that 300 and something to, in the first year, 1.4 billion. So you begin to ask yourself, so what has happened before?
The collaboration of the Federal Inland Revenue Service and the various state internal revenue services has also supported the states in growing non-oil revenues.
The board is established to ensure uniformity and harmonization of tax administration in the country, with particular emphasis on personal income tax. It also has the responsibility to advise the government at the 3 tiers on tax matters.
Under the Joint Tax Board, we're all members, we're equal members, although the FRS stands as chair. And we said that let's work together. Let's make tax payments more convenient for the taxpayer. Let's join resources. So I'll give you a typical example. If a multinational or a large corporate organization has offices in 10 states and they want to do a tax audit, that means those 10 states will come, and each of them will come and cross-check the books of that taxpayer to see what relates to its own state. So now we have joint tax audits. We will just set up a team. They'll check the books once and distribute, if I can say that, the tax liabilities by state. And the audit is done once in a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. And so you have one taxing group dealing with the taxpayer.
In collaboration with FIRS and the Joint Tax Board, we do meet quarterly, and the drive is also coming at the federal level, where they know that the oil revenue is dwindling, and for us is to increase the internally generated revenue. So every state was given a target, to increase the number of people they have in the tax net. We share best practices, information, learning experiences from all the states. We come in, we share, and in addition to that, JTB is like a clearinghouse. The chairman of FIRS is also the chairman of JTB. So if you need any assistance at the federal level, yes, you can go through directly to the agency involved, or you go through JTB and it will help you to speed up, whatever you need. So we do get a lot of information that maybe 2 or 3 years ago were not available, like registered companies in the whole of the country. That is a database. We work with Custom. Custom is a member of the Joint Tax Board.
The federal and states have exchanged information on taxpayers. Currently, the Federal Inland Revenue Service is supporting the states in providing some kind of support in software equipment in order to achieve automation of payment and collection processes of taxes, particularly withholding tax and the value-added tax. They've also carried out enforcement exercises. Recently, there was joint enforcement in Kano, where the Federal Inland Revenue Service enforcement team combined with those of Kano State IRS, and they carry out enforcement. Recently, there is also been an effort to register the taxpayer in the informal sector, and that is also being done jointly between the Federal Inland Revenue and Federal Inland Revenue Service and the State Internal Revenue Service. In Kano, in 2015, average monthly collection was about 600 million. Now, in the last 3 months, they've been going above 2 billion naira per month. Similarly, in Kaduna, monthly revenue collection has moved up to about 1.5 billion naira, as against less than 1 billion that they were collecting in in early part of 2015.
My expectations look very bright. We did not do as well as we had hoped for last year. Our figures have been reconciled to a large degree. In terms of our budget, I think we're able to do about 79 or 80% of last year's projected budget. This year, with all the new innovations that are ready to go right now, and also the audit process that has commenced, I think things are looking quite bright. One aspect of taxation is to make it convenient. So first of all, we have given taxpayers the opportunity to choose the location of their tax files. Prior to now, we had what we call large tax offices, and we had them in a couple of states of the Federation. So if you did have a tax issue, sometimes you'll have to travel from one state to another state to meet your account officer, or you'll have to travel for at least maybe an hour. So now you can choose where your file will be resident, and so that within 5-10 minutes, you can have a discussion with your tax officer, and your situation hopefully will be settled. We've also deployed technology, and when we're talking about e-filing, meaning that everything is electronic, we are going to go into the mass media to let all the taxpayers now know that, on a lighter note, that if you want to pay your taxes from your bedroom, you can pay your taxes from your bedroom. You don't have to go into a bank. Once you've got the application on your phone or on your computer, you can pay all your taxes online. You can also file online. And we are going to the stage of educating all the tax-paying public, and we're putting this out on TV, radio, football stadiums, music concerts. We're going to wherever the taxpayers are and letting them know that these are new changes.
As the FIRS and the various state internal revenue services work together, non-oil revenues on the national and subnational levels are set to grow even more in the near term. However, it will be interesting to see how many states react to the recent growth in oil revenues, driven by the rise in the oil price to over $50 a barrel. Will some succumb to the temptation to revert to a dependence on petrodollars, or will they see this as a windfall that can be used to drive the state's non-oil economy? Time will tell. I leave you with that thought, and on that note, we've come to the end of another edition of Nigeria Going Beyond Oil. Until we come back with a fresh look at the drive to shift the focus of Nigeria away from oil, I am Wole Famrewa saying thank you for watching.